My mother told me that my hands were built for the sawdust of the workshop floor, while my sister's brain was designed to rule the family empire. On the day I graduated at the top of my class with a degree in architecture and structural engineering, my parents didn't give me a promotion. Instead, they handed 51% of the company to my sister. Chloe, a woman who couldn't tell the difference between African ebony and painted plywood. They called me a manual laborer and told me to be grateful for the chance to work under her visionary leadership. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply packed my proprietary bioresin formulas and withdrew my intellectual property from the $15 million project the company had staked its entire existence on. 3 weeks later, when the gemstones on Chloe's prototype began to explode in front of our biggest client, my father called me, trembling with fear. But the price for these brainless hands to return was no longer a measly intern's salary. For 4 years. The world of sterling bespoke furniture didn't revolve around my father's aging charisma or my mother's social climbing. It revolved around a 2,000-square-foot climate-controlled workshop and the chemical compositions floating inside my head. While my sister Chloe was busy studying luxury brand management in Paris, which mostly involved charging $5,000 Chanel bags to the corporate credit card, I was living in a world of calipers, resin ratios, and structural integrity. I wasn't just the daughter of the owners, I was the soul of the production line. I had developed a technique I called cold molecular bonding. It allowed us to fuse raw malachite and lapis lazuli directly into rare hardwoods without using heat or traditional adhesives that would eventually crack the wood. It was the reason a sterling dining table cost $250,000 and why the ultra-wealthy waited 2 years for one. I worked 60 hours a week while finishing my thesis. I was the one who translated the artistic whims of billionaire clients into feasible blueprints. I was the one who negotiated with gemstone suppliers in Brazil to ensure we got the highest refractive index. And I did it all for the family. My salary zero, my title, junior workshop assistant. My parents always said the same thing. We're building a legacy for you, Elena. Every hour you spend here is an investment in your future throne. I believed them. I poured my life into the Aurelius project, a $15 million contract to furnish a 300-foot super yacht. It was the biggest deal in the history of the company, and the bank had only extended us a $2 million credit line for materials because my name was on the technical certifications. I had just finished the final bonding of the master mock-up, a table so beautiful it looked like the ocean frozen in wood. I thought this was the moment I'd finally be recognized as the successor. I was a fool. I had the technical brilliance to fuse stone to wood, but I was blind to the rot that had already fused itself to my family's hearts. I didn't realize that in my mother's eyes. I wasn't a CEO in waiting. I was just the most efficient tool in her shed. And you don't put a tool on a throne. You keep it in the basement until you need something fixed. The air at my graduation party smelled like expensive lilies and hypocrisy. My parents had rented out a gallery in Soho, filling it with the city's elite architects, developers, and the kind of people who buy art they don't understand just to feel important. I stood there in my graduation gown, my valedictorian medal heavy around my neck, feeling a rare sense of pride. I had done it. I had the degree. I had the technical mastery of the family business. And I had delivered the Aurelius mock-up that would save our company from its mounting debts. I saw my father, Arthur, clinking glasses with a prominent banker. My mother, Beatrice, was draped in silk, ushering my sister, Chloe, around the room. Chloe looked like she had just stepped off a runway, her eyes glazed with the bored indifference of someone who has never had to work for a single thing in her life. "Attention, everyone," my mother called out, tapping a crystal flute with a silver spoon. The room fell silent. I straightened my shoulders, expecting perhaps naively a mention of my honors or the 4 years of unpaid labor I'd poured into the workshop. "Today is a double celebration," Beatrice announced, her voice honeyed with fake warmth. "Not only has our youngest, Elena, finished her little schooling, but we are officially announcing the future of Sterling Bespoke. As of this morning, We have transferred 51% of the company's shares and the title of CEO to our eldest daughter, Chloe. The room erupted in polite applause. I felt the blood drain from my face. It felt like a physical blow to the chest. I looked at my father, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Chloe just smirked, blowing a kiss to the crowd. "Wait," I said, my voice cracking the refined atmosphere. "CEO Chloe hasn't been in the workshop in 3 years. She doesn't even know the curing time for the resin, let alone how to manage the Aurelius contract." My mother's smile didn't falter, but her eyes turned into chips of ice. She walked over to me, placing a hand on my shoulder in a way that looked maternal but felt like a vice grip. "Elena, darling, let's be realistic," she whispered loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "You have a wonderful gift. You're marvelous with your hands, a true artisan. But look at you. You smell like sawdust and chemicals even when you're dressed up. You have the mind of a laborer, a technician. You don't have the brain or the it factor to lead a luxury brand. Chloe is the face. She has the vision. You'll stay in the workshop where you belong, keeping the gears turning while your sister handles the big picture thinking." "The face," I retorted, a cold fire starting to burn in my gut. "The big picture is currently built on a chemical formula that only I know. You're giving the ship to someone who doesn't know how to read a compass." My father finally spoke up, his voice dismissive. "Don't be dramatic, Elena. It's a family decision. You should be happy for your sister. Now. Go get a drink and stop making a scene. You're a worker, not a politician. Act like it." I looked around the room at the people nodding in agreement. To them, I was just the help that happened to share the last name. The hands that made the pretty things. "I see," I said, my voice suddenly very calm, the kind of calm that precedes a Category 5 hurricane. "You're right, Mom. I am just a worker, and a worker only stays where they are valued." I took off my valedictorian medal and set it on a passing waiter's tray. I didn't wait for the cake. I didn't wait for the toasts. I walked out of that gallery and into the cool night air of New York, my mind already calculating the exact sequence of events that would lead to the total collapse of the Sterling Empire. They wanted a face fine. I'd let them see what happens when the face has no skull to support it. While the music was still thumping at my sister's coronation party, I was already back at the workshop. I didn't come here to smash furniture or pour acid on the inventory. Destruction is for the emotional. I was being purely structural. I walked through the silent rows of half-finished mahogany and marble, feeling no nostalgia, only the cold clarity of a scientist removing a vital organ from a failing patient. The first thing I did was sit down at my workstation. My mother thought leadership was about vision and faces. She forgot that in the 21st century, leadership is also about access. I logged into the company's secure cloud server, since I was the only one who actually knew how to use the CAD/CAM software. I was the sole administrator. With 5 clicks, I revoked the access credentials for every user except myself. All the 3D blueprints for the Aurelius project, the exact measurements for the super yacht's curved walls, the wiring diagrams for the integrated lighting vanished from the company's local tablets. Next, I turned my attention to the physical assets. My proprietary bioresin wasn't just a liquid. It was a 3-part chemical compound that required a specific catalyst ratio based on the ambient humidity of the workshop. I had kept the master logs in a handwritten notebook and a password-protected local drive. I wiped the drive and took the notebook. I then went to the chemical storage room. We had 10 gallons of the base resin left, but without the catalyst, which I had custom ordered under my personal LLC. Apex Materials, which I'd quietly formed a year ago. The base resin was nothing more than expensive. Sticky sludge. I then drafted a formal email to our gemstone suppliers and the exotic wood timber yard. I wasn't an employee. I was a technical consultant who had never signed a non-compete or a formal employment contract because my parents didn't want to pay the payroll taxes for their own daughter. I informed them that as of midnight, my technical certification for Sterling Bespoke's projects was withdrawn. The most important move, however, was the bank. The $2 million credit line for the Aurelius materials was contingent on my personal professional indemnity insurance and my status as the lead project engineer. I sent a short, dry notification to our loan officer stating that I had resigned from the project effective immediately. By 9 a.m. Monday, that credit line would be frozen. Finally. I looked at the master mock-up, the $15 million table. It was a masterpiece. I didn't touch it. I wanted it to stay there. I wanted it to be the last thing they saw before the rot set in. Without the bioresin's stabilizing properties, and without the climate control settings I had meticulously calibrated, that table was a ticking time bomb of structural failure in 21 days. When the wood naturally contracted, the stones would begin to delaminate and crack. I packed my personal tools, the calipers my grandfather gave me, and my specialized resin mixers and walked out. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave a key. I left them exactly what they asked for: a luxury brand with a beautiful face, a visionary CEO, and a workshop full of workers. As I drove away, I looked at my hands. They were stained with walnut oil and scarred from years of precision work. My mother was right. I was good with my hands, but she was too arrogant to realize that my hands only did what my brain commanded. And my brain had just commanded them to stop building my parents' dream and start building their nightmare. Monday morning at Sterling Bespoke was usually a symphony of precision, the hum of CNC machines, the rhythmic sanding of grain, and the scent of expensive oils. But 3 days after my departure, the workshop sounded like a funeral. I wasn't there to hear it, but the frantic texts from the senior craftsmen men I had worked alongside for years painted a vivid picture of the disaster. Chloe had arrived at 10 a.m. not with a set of blueprints, but with a social media film crew. Her first visionary act as CEO was to redecorate the front office and demand that the master craftsmen wear more aesthetic uniforms for her Day in the Life of a Boss Girl vlog. She walked into the workshop, pointing at the $15 million Aurelius mock-up with her manicured finger. "We need this finished and polished by Friday," she told the head carpenter, old Pete. "The Aurelius representatives are coming for the final inspection. Make it pop for the cameras." "We can't, Chloe," Pete had replied, his voice trembling with frustration. "We can't access the CAD files. The server is locked, and we're out of the bonding resin. Elena was the only one who had the key to the chemical safe and the mixing ratios." Chloe's response was a masterclass in arrogance. "It's just glue." "Pete, don't be dramatic. Go to the hardware store and buy the best industrial adhesive they have. And as for the files, just call IT. Elena probably just forgot the password. She's always been disorganized with brain work." IT, of course. Couldn't help. I hadn't forgotten the password. I had deleted the directory. By Tuesday, the face of the company was starting to crack. The bank had officially frozen the credit line, and a shipment of $400,000 worth of Brazilian tiger wood was sitting at the docks, refused because the payment hadn't cleared. But the real disaster was the resin. Desperate to impress the Aurelius Group, Chloe ordered the team to use a high-strength commercial epoxy. To the untrained eye, it looked fine for about 48 hours. But commercial epoxy is rigid. My bioresin formula was designed to expand and contract with the wood's natural breath. Without that flexibility, the bond became a weapon. By Thursday, the workshop was a war zone. As the humidity shifted, the luxury furniture began to scream. Literally, the tension between the rigid stone and the moving wood caused loud, sharp cracks to echo through the hall. Chloe tried to hide the damage with wood filler and wax, burying the structural failures under a layer of cosmetic lies. My mother, Beatrice, spent the week calling my phone, her messages shifting from "stop being a child and come to work" to "you are being incredibly selfish." Elena. She still didn't get it. She thought I was throwing a tantrum. She didn't realize I had performed a surgical extraction of the company's heart. When the sun rose on Friday, the day of the Aurelius inspection, the $15 million mock-up was a hollow shell. It looked beautiful on Chloe's Instagram story that morning, filtered and glowing, but underneath the surface, the molecular bonds were failing, the brain of the company was gone, and the face was about to meet reality head-on. The climax of the sterling bespoke era didn't happen with a bang, but with a series of sickening, crystalline snaps. Friday morning. The showroom was staged to perfection. My mother had spent $20,000 on catering and champagne for the Aurelius Group executives. Chloe stood next to the master mock-up table, wearing a white power suit, her visionary smile ready for the cameras. She was playing the part of the CEO to a T. Then, Marcus Aurelius, the billionaire patriarch of the group, walked in. He didn't care about the champagne. He walked straight to the table, his eyes narrowing. He was a man who had built empires on the precision of his engineers, not the charm of his PR teams. "It looks different," Marcus said, his voice a low rumble. He leaned in, running his hand over the surface where the lapis lazuli met the ebony. "It's the new direction I've taken the brand. Marcus," Chloe chirped, her voice hitting a pitch of desperation I could hear even through the recording old Pete sent me later. "We've optimized the aesthetic." "You've optimized the aesthetic by using cheap industrial epoxy?" Marcus asked, his voice turning cold. He tapped a specific section of the stone. "The refractive index is off, and more importantly," he didn't have to finish. At that exact moment, the climate control which Chloe had turned up to Arctic to keep herself from sweating triggered the wood's contraction. A sound like a gunshot echoed through the showroom. A 3-foot vein of lapis lazuli, unable to move with the wood, buckled under the internal pressure and shattered into 1,000 blue shards. One shard flew off, narrowly missing Marcus's face and landing in a crystal bowl of caviar. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, another crack, then another. The $15 million masterpiece was disintegrating in real time, its soul literally exploding because it had been held together by lies and face instead of science and hands. "This is an insult," Marcus whispered. "You used my deposit to build a fraud. My lawyers will contact you by noon. I'm not just canceling the contract. I'm suing for the 3-month delay this puts on my yacht's launch. That's $20 million in liquidated damages." He walked out, followed by his entourage of stony-faced executives. My mother fainted. My sister started screaming at the craftsman. And my father. My father did the only thing he knew how to do when his world collapsed. He called the person he had discarded. I was sitting in a quiet cafe 3 blocks away when my phone buzzed. I let it ring for 4 cycles before answering. "Elena, thank God." My father's voice was unrecognizable, high-pitched and frantic. "You have to come now. There's been an accident at the showroom, the Aurelius table. It's broken. Chloe says the workers sabotaged it. Marcus is suing us into the ground. If we don't fix this by Monday, the bank will seize the house. Please. Elena, get down here and fix it. I'll increase your stipend. I'll even let you have your own office." I took a slow sip of my black coffee. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm a bit confused. Why are you calling me? You told me I was just hands." Surely Chloe's visionary brain can think of a way to reverse a molecular chemical failure. Or maybe she can just brand the cracks as a new luxury feature. "Elena, don't do this. We're family. Family pays their workers." "Dad," I replied, my voice as flat as a sheet of polished steel. "Family doesn't trade their daughter's life's work for a sister's vanity. If you want my hands back, you're going to have to deal with my brain first. And my brain says the price of sterling bespoke just hit rock bottom." The sterling bespoke showroom looked like a crime scene when I walked in on Monday morning. Shattered lapis lazuli lay on the floor like blue hailstones. My mother was slumped in a chair, her designer silk stained with tears, while Chloe was frantically trying to delete the Boss Girl vlog from her social media. The face of the company had officially collapsed into a heap of expensive rubble. My father looked at me like I was a life raft in a storm. "Elena, you're here. Thank God. Start with the resin if we can just patch it before the lawyers arrive." "I'm not here to patch anything." "Dad," I said, placing a leather briefcase on the cracked table. "I'm here to buy." The room went cold. "Buy!" my mother gasped. "We're your parents. You're supposed to save us." "I am saving the legacy," I replied. opening the briefcase to reveal a set of legal documents. But the family business died the moment you told me I was nothing but a tool. Here is my offer. I have already met with Marcus Aurelius. He doesn't want sterling bespoke. He wants me. He's agreed to drop the lawsuit on one condition, that I take over the contract under my new company, Apex Materials. I slid a contract across the table. You will transfer 100% of Sterling's remaining physical assets, the workshop, and the brand name to Apex for exactly $1 in return. I assume your $2 million debt and the Aurelius liability. You get to keep your house and retire in quiet shame. Chloe, however, is fired effective immediately. She can find a new vision at the unemployment office. You're stealing our company, Chloe shrieked, her face turning a blotchy red. I'm not stealing it, I said, looking her dead in the eye. I'm reclaiming the brain you thought didn't exist. You wanted the throne. Chloe. Well, look around. This is what your leadership built: a pile of broken glass and a lawsuit. You're lucky I'm even leaving you with a place to sleep. My father looked at the documents, then at the ruins of his workshop. He realized that without my technical certifications and the bio-resin, the company was just a collection of saws and debt. He signed. My mother followed, her hand trembling so hard she could barely finish the B in her name. As they walked out, my mother stopped at the door. How could you be so cold? Elena, we gave you everything. You gave me a workbench and a lie, I said, already pulling my calipers from my pocket. You told me I only had hands. I just proved that my hands are the only thing holding your world together. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a $15 million project to finish. And this time, my name is the only one on the door. I turned my back on them and walked toward the workshop. The craftsmen were waiting. Old Pete tipped his cap to me, a genuine smile on his face. What's the move, boss? He asked. The move, Pete, is to do it right, I said. Clean up the face. We're going back to the soul.